Outlook Live tuning rolling. We seek refuge in God from the accursed Satan. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. May the peace and blessings of God be upon Muhammad and his blessed family and the chosen companions. Dearest brothers, Salam alaikum wa rahmatullah. A couple of days ago, a brother, who seemed to be Sunni, entered our live class and started asking poorly about his Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab. Well, we who follow the great Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei are prohibited from disrespecting the caliphs, but we have permission to speak and to tell the truth with great respect. So I have chosen a book. It is called the Ghadir, which is by Alameh Amini, the great scholar Alameh Amini, and that is the chosen one from the book the Ghadir. From there, we have a chapter that says, Nawadir ul-Athar fi ilmi Umar. The part where we can say, strange things about the great wisdom, or let's say, the knowledge of Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab. Well, let's look at this person who, after the Messenger of God came to power, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who prohibited the Messenger of God from writing his will. And he says to the Messenger of God, the man is delirious. He is insulting the Messenger of God and does not allow the Messenger of God to write his will in the last days of his life. And then the Messenger of God gets upset and expels him from his house. And the last word of the Messenger of God is, Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab is Kumuani. Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you. I don't want to. Get out of my sight. Get out of my house. It is the last word of the Messenger of God that I have done up to his house. So we want to see what that gentleman did when he came to power. What are the things he did? There are many things. There is even a book. Having that book in Saudi Arabia means life imprisonment or your death sentence. And what if they find that book? What is that book? It speaks of the life of Mr. Umar ibn al-Khattab. It is a selected book of what is found in the authentic sources about Umar ibn al-Khattab. But that gentleman, that noble gentleman, has so many virtues in the Sunni sources. If they catch you with that book in your hand in Saudi Arabia, they will take you to hang. This is how I tell you, that book cannot be found in Saudi Arabia. Well, but these are from their sources. That will never tell you about the life of Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now we will go one by one. First, this gentleman was one of the most ignorant about the sacred Quran. I am not the one saying this. The same Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab confessed it. For example, in the sacred Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, verse 43, we have a situation where you are in a place with little or no water, or where the water is harmful to you. When you cannot use water or do not have water available, there is a practice called tayammum. It consists of placing your two hands on pure earth, removing the dust, and then passing it over your forehead, followed by your right hand, and then your left hand, while removing any rings. This is called tayammum, and if it is badal al-ros, then you pass it to the hand twice. It is called tayammum. So, with the difference that exists among scholars, when a person cannot find water, they must perform the prayer using tayammum instead of wudu. And Lord Umar ibn al-Khattab did not know this rule or was unaware of it. By the way, what is mentioned in the Holy Quran says that if you are sick and cannot touch water, or if you are traveling and will not find water, or if one of you comes from the bathroom and cannot find water to perform ablution or do the ghusl, or if one is going to have sexual relations with his wife and does not have enough water to perform ghusl, you know that it is obligatory to perform ghusl before prayer. And if you do not find water, then you should perform tayammum, which is a dry ablution using clean soil or dust. This is a substitute for water when it is not available. The Quran emphasizes the importance of cleanliness and purity before prayer, and tayammum is a way to maintain this when water is not accessible. So perform tayammum with pure soil, then make tayammum on the ground on the pure earth. And he explains it. With both hands, the palm of the hand you pass to his face, that is, the forehead, and to both hands, and God is the forgiver and forgiveness. So let us look at Imam Muslim in his book, Muslim, where this Muslim took from page 355, narration number 112. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, in his book Musnad, volume 4, page 265, and also in volume 5, page 329, in narration number 1786, states that a person came before Umar ibn al-Khattab and said, I have ejaculated and I am in a state of janaba, and I need to perform ghusl, but I cannot find water. What should I do? Umar ibn al-Khattab said, do not pray. Do not pray. Love was present there. He said, Oh, Lord, do you not remember that you and I were in a war, and we needed to go to make ruz and could not find water? You have not prayed, Umar ibn al-Khattab, you have not prayed, and I love and do. The great companion of the Messenger of God says, I performed tayammum and I prayed. The Messenger of God told me to love and do what you have done, that you have struck the ground with your hand and all that. Then that is valid. And Umar did not pray on that day. Umar, enough already. Love, enough already means shut up. There's no need for you to remind me of the day I didn't pray. So imagine a narration that according to Bukhari, that narration is correct. According to Muslim, what they are narrating in the book Sahih Bukhari, volume 1, page 129, narration number 331, is that Umar ibn al-Khattab did not know that ruling from the sacred Quran and instructed that person who did not find water that it was not necessary for him to pray. Well, this is one. In other Sunni sources, when a person doubts the number of units in prayer, for example, when a person is praying a 4-unit prayer and does not know whether they have completed 2 units or 3 units of prayer, Umar ibn al-Khattab does not know his rule and admits that he does not know it, even though the Messenger of God had taught him. And other verses from the Holy Quran that Umar ibn al-Khattab does not know about how many months a woman breastfeeds her child. Umar even wants to kill a woman because he does not know this rule. In another instance, it is noted that Umar ibn al-Khattab does not know what the Holy Quran is. Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4 of the Holy Quran, states that Bayhaqi mentions in his book Sunan al-Kubra, volume 7, page 233, that one day Umar ascended the pulpit in the mosque and said that the dowry for women should be set very low. One of the women stands up and says, that is against the Holy Quran. Umar ibn al-Khattab asks, how so? Because he does not know the Holy Quran. She recites the Holy Quran. That woman recites that verse 20 of Surah An-Nisa, if one of you has indeed set a sack of gold as the dowry for his wife, he cannot actually take it back when they are going to divorce. That gift is truly for the woman. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab said, everyone is wiser than Umar. Is that Umar ibn al-Khattab's word? If he acknowledges that he is an ignorant person, what more do you want? Well, there are other verses from the Holy Quran mentioned here that say Umar ibn al-Khattab did not know them. It says that a woman who was possessed, insane, and had committed fornication, Umar ibn al-Khattab wanted to kill that woman. Then Imam Ali teaches Umar ibn al-Khattab that a woman who is considered insane is not subject to criminal penalties. In other words, during Hajj, the same thing happens, where people are taught the laws of the sacred Quran. And Umar would say every time this happened, Everyone is wiser than Umar. They know more about Islamic jurisprudence than Umar. Well, now let's proceed to the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha in the prayer. You know that all Muslims in prayer must recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Although one of the innovations of Umar ibn al-Khattab is to say Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in a low voice. Why in a low voice? Because when you do it in a loud voice, you expel the demon. And Umar teaches to do it in a low and gentle voice. Then you will clearly see the Sunnis, who follow the traditions of the Prophet, pray like this. 2001, which means 2001 in German. This is how they pray. But in the school, in the Shia school, what we follow from the Sunnah, the conduct of the Messenger of God, is that we say Bismillah aloud. You will see family like that. Look, Bismillah is said aloud, while they say it quietly. And another thing Abdurrahman ibn Handala says, this is in the Sunni book Fathul Bari, volume 3, pages 69, and also on page 90, as well as in the book Bayhaqi in the section in the Cobra, volume 2, page 382, states that Umar ibn al-Khattab led the Maghrib prayer in the first century of prayer and did not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. He said Allahu Akbar immediately, then went to Ruku, thus abandoning Surah Al-Fatiha. So when he arrived in the second cycle, he recited Surah Al-Fatiha twice. Look, in the first century of prayer, he did not receive Surah Al-Fatiha. In the second century, he recited Surah Al-Fatiha twice. When he finished the prayer, he performed 2 sajda as a way to compensate. Then, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani says that narration is a correct narration. In another narration, Abu Salama Temna Abdurrahman says that Umar ibn al-Khattab led the Maghrib prayer and did not recite Surah Al-Fatiha at all. Neither Surah Al-Fatiha nor Surah Al-Ikhlas. So when the prayer was over, the people asked him, Sir, did you not recite Surah Al-Fatiha? Did you say Allahu Akbar right away? Did you go to Ruku? Right away Sajda? What's wrong with you? 2009? Does Umar ask, but is the Ruku and Sajda performed there? They said, yes, you have performed the Ruku and Sajda correctly. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab said, there is no problem. No problem. It is in the book Zona, in the Kobrau, volume 2, page 347. He was a phenomenon. Then Abu Musa Ash'ari says to Umar ibn al-Khattab, O Lord of the believers, have you recited Surah Al-Fatiha even in a low voice? He replies, no. Umar says no. So this time, they are going to make the call to prayer again, calling everyone to return to the mosque and repeat the prayer. What happens to you, Mr. Umar ibn al-Khattab, when you have not recited Surah Al-Fatiha? Do they have to redo the prayer or is it correct? Not even Umar ibn al-Khattab knows. Once he says it is correct, and another time Abu Musa Ash'ari is going to grab him and says, Sir, what is wrong with you? Have you not recited Surah Al-Fatiha? He replies, well, let's repeat the rest. That is to say, he himself does not know how he should conduct himself. In other words, he is an ignorant person who has a contradictory behavior. This also applies to Umar ibn al-Khattab regarding inheritance, as there are cases of ignorance that he does not understand. And several times Umar ibn al-Khattab asks the Imam of Islam and says that if it weren't for Imam Ali, Umar would be a lost person. So why does this lost man come to seize power? Because it is not given to the person who deserves it, which is Imam al-Riza. That is the question. Once it is said that Umar ibn al-Khattab participated, which is also interesting. Umar summoned a woman who was a singer to appear before the caliph. Perhaps he wanted to punish her. This woman was pregnant when she heard that Umar had called her and summoned her to appear before him. Out of fear, she miscarried her child. A woman who was raped. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab wanted to stone her, but they prevented him. Imam Ali told Yusuf that this cannot be because the Holy Quran indeed teaches us in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 173 that if a person is compelled or in a state of emergency, and if they have been violated and forced, then that person is not actually subject to criminal penalties. Truly indeed. But Umar, ignoring that law of the Holy Quran, wanted to kill that woman. Well, there are other narrations that are honestly very silly. I'm not going to tell you. Let me tell you which source it comes from, what book it has been taken from. The book is Okadol Farid, Volume 3, page 416. Let's see. It's very interesting. One day, Umar ibn al-Khattab was walking through the streets of the city of Medina. It must be told just like that. Then, in the street of the Medina, he suddenly heard a noise coming from inside a house. He climbed onto the wall of the house and saw a man drinking alcohol, and with a woman who was not his wife. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab raised his voice and said, "O enemy of God, do you think that God will help you while you are in disobedience? Do you think God is going to hide from you while you are committing the sin of drinking alcohol and fornicating with another man's wife?" Then that man said to Mr. Umar, "O Umar, if I have committed one mistake, you have committed 3 sins. First, the Holy Quran says, "Wala tajasu." Do not spy. Do not, we can say, seek the secrets of others. And do not spy, as the Holy Quran prohibits us from prying into the private matters of others. It is forbidden. For example, in Iran, which is an Islamic government, the police never have permission to snoop on what is happening inside a person's house. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 12. So, Umar ibn al-Khattab, you have snooped into what is inside my house. First sin. Second, the Holy Quran says, in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 189, "Enter through the gates, and you have entered through the wall." This is your second 1000th error. And the sacred Quran says in Surah An-Nur, verse 61, "When you enter houses, greet one another with a greeting from Allah, blessed and good." When you enter a house, greet them by saying Assalamu alaikum. And you did not say you insulted me. So I have made a mistake. I have drunk alcohol and all that with that foreign woman, and you have made 3 mistakes. So Umar, when you heard that, did you do any good deeds for you to be forgiven? The man said, "I swear by God that I will not commit that sin again. Umar, go, and I have forgiven you." Can you imagine? Let's move on to the next point, which is super interesting. That Umar ibn al-Khattab drank alcohol. He was one of the people who drank alcohol. We will also recite to them about the law of retaliation. Umar ibn al-Khattab did not know. And indeed, an old woman also corrected an error of Umar. Then Umar also says, actually Umar. Then they tell Umar ibn al-Khattab that everyone knows Islamic jurisprudence better than you. Can we go one of the customs of Umar ibn al-Khattab was to hit women. And that is in many places. And not once, not twice, but many times. I remember that once a brother from Spain who was Sunni, perhaps he was Wahhabi. When I recited to him that very famous narration of Ash, as that says I was in the house of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Let me bring this up. Reis mentions that he was present in the house of Umar ibn al-Khattab, a significant figure in Islamic history. He confirms this by saying, yes, indicating his presence there. Asha Seb says that girl is very interesting. That narration which is in the Sunni Sources. Let me bring it. It is in Sunan Abi Dawud. And that brother, when I passed him, that narration. Yes? Then he couldn't believe it. I said to him, look at this Sonane Ibn Tomo, page 639. It is a very famous narration from the Sunni brothers, Yusand, which says, one night I was at Umar ibn al-Khattab's house when we were at midnight. Suddenly Umar got up at midnight and started hitting his wife. So I, hearing the cries of Umar ibn al-Khattab's wife, intervened and said, why are you hitting that poor woman? So when he returned to his bed, he said to me, O Ashan. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab calmed down. After having hit his wife, he went to sleep. As he was leaving, heading towards sleep, he said to me, O Ashan, listen carefully. Memorize that narration I heard from the Messenger of God. Total lie. But listen, what Umar ibn al-Khattab was is a professional liar. He instantly invented that fabricated narration and attributed it to the Messenger of God. What a liar. Then he says, memorize this word that I have heard from the Messenger of God. Layus alurayul fima yadre bemrata. Listen to that. It says that a man is not asked why he has hit his wife. A man is not asked. It's like Umar ibn al-Khattab had the disease called sadism. Sadism. A man enjoys torturing his wife, hitting his wife. 2001 says Layos alojamrata. One does not ask a man why he hits his wife, which is like giving the green light to all men who might hit their wives. Total lie. The Messenger of God has many narrations that prohibit that. And he says, what a pity for the man who strikes his wife's cheek and then wants to embrace her. How can it be that with so much shame you are not ashamed to hit your wife and then you want to kiss her and hug her? How can that be? How dare you hit a woman who is as tender as a little flower and then want to be intimate with her? What a shame. Imagine. Then he says three things and mentions one thing. And in the end, Umar ibn al-Khattab says to forget the third. Is that also in Ahmad's Musnad? Volume 1, page 77. It is also in the Musnad of Ahmad, and in other sources it is in Kansul Omal, volume 16, page 498. And well, Albani, who was a great Wahhabi, when that narration comes, then he says, how are we going to do this? We are going to say that it is weak. Let's say he is weak, avoiding the answer. It's very interesting, guys. Look, this is a link. I'm going to send you the link to that narration. So Umar, one of the customs he had was to hit the ladies. He would hit women, many times hitting women. Not only Wasan, his wives, but also his children. Ibn Azakar narrates from Akramateb about Khalid. He says that one of the sons of Umar ibn al-Khattab had put on elegant clothing, looking very handsome. When Umar ibn al-Khattab saw him, he began to beat his son with the stick and the whip. He struck him that he made his own son cry. His daughter Hafsa asked him, Dad, why did you hit my brother? Umar? He said, for nothing. I saw that he became arrogant by putting on elegant clothing. He became arrogant. I wanted to break his prestige. I wanted to hit him, to break his prestige. I wanted to humiliate his ego. It is in the book Tarijol Jolafa, page 96. Interesting. Interesting. Again, that too. This narration is horrible. That the messenger of God had a stepdaughter, an adopted daughter, named Zaina 2000. What they have heard is that the messenger of God had only one biological son, Ibrahim, who died when he was a year and a half old, and Fatima Tazahara, may peace be upon her, who was martyred by Umar ibn al-Khattab. The messenger of God had no more children. He had no biological son, but he did have an adopted son. That is to say, he had adopted these daughters of Yusuf, who were nieces of Khadijah, and lived in the house of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Therefore they were called the daughters of Muhammad. Where one of them was Zainab. When she dies, the women of Medina come crying for her. The messenger of God says to take her to his deceased stepdaughter Zainab, take her to Hakuha Besalafen, to Hayar, to Othman ibn Mazon, take her where the grave of Osmar ibn Madun is, bury her near the grave of Osman. The women of Medina began to cry. Umar ibn al-Khattab, in front of the eyes of the messenger of God, began to beat the family of the messenger of God with a whip. He attacked like a savage. He attacked the family of the messenger of God with a whip. Did the messenger of God intervene and say, "What are you doing? Let the women weep and let their tears flow. Oh women, take care not to shout. It's a demon's scream. Sometimes when something happens to a woman, she starts that which is not allowed. That is, when a person starts to blaspheme at the funeral, at the burial, saying, 'Oh God, why have you taken my mother like this?' That is not allowed. One can cry. But when a person asks you, it is not allowed to do so. We can say the gestures of the ungrateful demonic devil, that is not allowed. So Umar ibn al-Khattab was such a disrespectful person that he began to hit the family of the messenger of God. And there was also Fatima Tezahra present, and it is said that he also hit Fatima. Tezahra, Ibn Abbas says that the messenger of God, along with his daughter Fatima, sat down and cried for the passing of Zainab, the stepdaughter of the messenger of God. And the messenger of God was passing his clothes, wiping the tears of Fatima. It is in the book Musnad of Ahmad, which is a Sunni source, volume 1, pages 237 and 335. It is also in the book Al-Mustadrak, volume 3, page 190. Well, they invented a false narration that says, the deceased suffers from the cries of the living. That is a lie. It is very interesting that Hakim al-Shaburi narrates from Aisha, who said that what Umar ibn al-Khattab said is a lie. Interesting. Well, then also distance yourself from the Holy Quran. Reject what Umar ibn al-Khattab said, because the Holy Quran states that God does not harm one person for the sin of another. Well, it is also interesting when they killed, martyred Hamza, the uncle of the Messenger of God. The Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seeing that all the martyrs have relatives who mourn for them, but Hamza has no family there in Medina to weep for him. Then the Messenger of God says, "O Hamza, what a pity that there are no women to weep for him." Then the women went to mourn for Hamza. And The Ansar, the people of Medina, said to them, "Please, before you cry, and hold a mourning gathering for your martyrs, let us mourn for the martyrdom of Hamza." The messenger of God asks to mourn for Hamza, his martyred uncle. The messenger of God also cried several times to evoke emotions. Another thing among the innovations, quite a few innovations he made, was when he went to Mecca and they did not perform the sacrifice of a lamb. Is this in Kanz al-Ummah? It is also in Mu'jam al-Kabir al-Tabarani, volume 3, page 182, narration number 3058. Moreover, at what age does a person become liable for their actions? Well, in Islam it is said that when a boy reaches adulthood, he must answer for his actions. This means, for example, if he commits theft, he will be punished. It says that a teenager had stolen in Iraq. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab invented a rule. He invented many things. Did he not ask whether the boy has reached puberty? Is he an adult or not? He said, they are going to measure him. If it is 6 palms, then they will apply the law based on the height. They applied the law. If he has reached 6 palms of the hand, then they are going to cut off that teenager's finger. Then they measured his height. He did not reach 6 palms, so they released him. Well, another thing that Umar ibn al-Khattab would do when he heard that one of the governors he had was stealing from the public wealth was to take all the money that had been stolen and split it in half. He would keep half for himself, the thief. Half of it he took for himself, for the common wealth. Interesting, isn't it? It didn't matter how much you had stolen, he would divide it in 2. He would give half to the thief and the other half that had been stolen from the commonwealth. For example, a governor who had stolen from the public wealth would bring all his silver, confiscate all his silver, and split it in half for himself and half for the government. Interesting. Another of the innovations that Umar ibn al-Khattab made was the 3 divorces. In a divorce, which is a lie, it is madness that today it still exists in the Sunnah school. In Islam, when you divorce your wife, you enter the waiting period, which lasts almost 3 months. During those 3 months, if the man returns to the woman, the divorce is annulled. So it is a time for man and woman to restore their relationship. If they are going to divorce for the 2nd time, the waiting period starts again. For the 3rd time, it will end. Yes, there is no waiting period. So, they at school say that it is possible to have 3 divorces in one meeting. I divorce you 3 times. It makes no sense for me to divorce you, so she is no longer your wife for you to carry out the 2nd divorce. So that madness brought him here. So what happens? What is the problem? The problem starts here. If you divorce your wife 3 times in a row, you cannot remarry her until another man has married her, until that waiting period is over. In the case of the 3rd divorce, the waiting period will come to an end. She is going to marry another man, and the other man is going to have penetrative sexual relations with her. Yes. Another man is sleeping with your wife, ex-wife. If at some point she liked that man to divorce your ex-wife, and the waiting period has ended, now you can return to your wife. Imagine. So now the Sunni brothers have thousands of problems because the man gets upset. For example, in the Shia school, which is the Sunnah of the Messenger of God, you cannot divorce your wife during her menstruation. You cannot divorce your wife without having 2 witnesses. A just Muslim man, without their presence, cannot divorce his wife. And there are many conditions. But in school, it's a 2000 and ciao. You then put 3 divorces. Immediately, you put your wife, and you can no longer stay with her. She has to go through the waiting period and then marry another man. Imagine. That was also another part of the innovations of Umar ibn al-Khattab. You can see it in the book Sonar el Cobro de Nezao, volume 3, page 285291. Other things. And the sacred Quran says, that is not divorce. It is not in the way that Umar ibn al-Khattab says. The divorce and the waiting period are 2 times, and when you reach the 3rd, it is over. Let's move on just a little bit more. That Umar ibn al-Khattab was very racist. He imposed many rules against non-Arabs. For example, non-Arabs were not permitted to enter the city of Medina. Arabs could marry non-Arab women who said, I am. But those who were not Arabs could not marry Arab women. A total racism. Total Arabism. And among many other rules, for example, the Arabs received more than their fair share of wealth, having special support from the governor. But the Persians, the non-Arabs, always suffered. Well, let's move on to the next one, which is about here. Well, Umar ibn al-Khattab learned Surah al-Baqarah for 12 years. It took him 2 years to learn a chapter of the Holy Quran, which is Surah al-Baqarah. He was so talented. That is in the book Tafsira Kortavi, page 34 as well. If Raya Omar of Ibn 165 says, with the correct chain of narration, he says that when he was indeed able to finish Surah al-Baqarah, he killed a camel to thank God. He was so talented that it took him 2 years to recite and learn the recitation of Surah al-Baqarah. Not to memorize, but to learn its recitation in Arabic. It cost him so much. Thank you. He also prohibited Haji Tamato, the temporary marriage. We passed that quickly. Now, one of the things that Umar ibn al-Khattab had was an addiction to alcohol. He was an alcoholic. So when the law prohibiting the consumption of alcohol reached him, Umar found it difficult to accept. Mr. Umar ibn al-Khattab struggled with it. Therefore, he continued drinking alcohol. It is very interesting that we are going to see what Zamakhshari says in his book Rabiul Abror. It says that God sent 3 verses from the Holy Quran prohibiting alcohol. Then it says that, for example, they should not approach prayer when they are drunk, as mentioned in that chapter 43. Among other verses, and Umar ibn al-Khattab continues to insist on drinking alcohol. One day, Umar ibn al-Khattab gets drunk on a large camel bone, and he attacks Abdurrahman ibn Auf, breaking his head. Then he starts singing that song about alcohol and wine, which is so enjoyable that it is like a mockery of the Messenger of God. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab tells your God to forbid me my drink, and tell your God to forbid me from food. When this reached the Messenger of God, very irritated, left in such a way that his cloak was dragging on the ground. Then, with what he had in hand, the Messenger of God struck Umar ibn al-Khattab hard on the head. And when Umar came to his senses, he said, I seek refuge in God and His Messenger. And that verse from the Holy Quran indeed arrived, Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5 of the Holy Quran, verse 91, which states, of course, that Satan wants to bring enmity and hatred among you with wine. and gambling. So avoid this, as he wants to prevent you from remembering God and also from performing your duties. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab stands up this time and says, "Enough, enough, that's enough." But he lies, because he continues to drink alcohol. Where does Umar say this? When he was in the time of ignorance, he always drank alcohol. He himself acknowledges it in Sunan al-Kubra by Bayhaqi, volume 10, page 214, in the book The History and Biography of Umar, written by Ibn Jawzi, page 98. In several books, for example, Qurtabi in his Tafsir, in his book of Exegesis of the Holy Quran, volume 6, page 30, and in the book Al-Shadosari, volume 7, page 95, which is so famous that no one rejects it, Umar ibn al-Khattab says, "Inni kuntu la ashrabunas laha fil jahariya," that he was the most intoxicated, the one who drank the most, that everyone drank alcohol, and that it is not like fornication, justifying it. So, in Hajjatul Baydo, the last pilgrimage of the Messenger of God, when that law prohibiting the consumption of alcohol was revealed, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was an alcohol addict, then tries to justify drinking alcohol. It is in the book Zone in the Cobra by Bayhaqi, volume 8, page 299, which states that Umar justified why he drank alcohol, saying, "We drink alcohol because camel meat bothers our stomach. Who will see that alcohol takes away intellect? Just mix it a little with water, and if you mix the alcohol with water, then it's ready." And you can see Umar ibn al-Khattab, "I am a man who has stomach problems, so I drink alcohol." That nabid was a type of alcohol, a kind of beer, alcohol that was made from dates. It helps me, it eases my stomach. So in that recipe from Umar ibn al-Khattab, which is also from Jaume of Abi Hanifa, I take 2, page 190 as well, page 215. Umar teaches that if that alcohol is going to get you drunk, mix it with a little water, and that's it. Damn it. Very well. So even a man who drinks nabis, the type of alcohol made from dates. One day a man drank that alcohol which belonged to Umar ibn al-Khattab, got drunk, and Umar punished him. Then the person said, "Lord, I have drunk from your drink." Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "You have gotten drunk. I, when I drink it, do not get drunk. So there is no problem. You take it and get drunk." Amr ibn Maymun in the book Torija Bardo, History of Bardo, by Hatibe Bardodit, volume 6, pages 156, states that until the last breath of Umar ibn al-Khattab's life, when Umar was on his deathbed, he was dying, with his belly wounded as if it had been stabbed. Even so, he drank that nabis. It is said that when Umar ibn al-Khattab was attacked, I saw him on his deathbed, and they were serving him nabis. He was drinking nabis, even as it came out of his stomach, because there was a hole where a knife had been inserted into his abdomen. Thus, the nabis that Umar drank was coming out. It was so strong that anyone who drank it would get drunk. It is in the book now, page 416. And also, like the Quran, volume 2, page 565, also in the area of the Cobra Ibeja, volume 8, page 326. It is said that a man drank Nabi's alcohol from Umar ibn al-Khattab, got drunk, and Umar hit him for being drunk. Then Umar asked for water and mixed the alcohol with a little water. It was about teaching not to drink strong alcohol, just add more water. That's it. Interesting. But the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is also mentioned in the authentic sources that Umar ibn al-Khattab was ignorant of this. It is found in the book Sunan al-Bayhaqi, volume 8, page 301. There are many narrations from the Messenger of God that say, what intoxicates you a lot, drinking a little is prohibited. That if something is intoxicating, any liquid that is alcohol, whether it is beer or anything that can get you drunk, even a drop of it is prohibited. You want to mix it with 2 liters of water. That won't get you drunk at all. It is still impure and it is forbidden to drink it. Whether you want to take it in a strong glass or not. In any case, that is prohibited. The Messenger of God says, I prohibit the little intoxicants, for much of them will intoxicate you. The little is also prohibited. But Umar ibn al-Khattab denies that order from the Messenger of God. Well, a man wants to go visit Jerusalem, and Umar ibn al-Khattab is going to threaten him regarding the fast of the month of Rajab. Umar ibn al-Khattab is going to prohibit it as well. Here we have Umar ibn al-Khattab prohibited narrating stories of the Messenger of God. And this is found in many of the books that Umar ibn al-Khattab prohibited people from speaking about the Messenger of God. He prohibited the Messenger of God, peace be upon him, so much that he wrote it in his will. He attacked the house of Fatima so much that he crushed Fatima between the door and the wall, causing her to miscarry her child. He was a murderer, Umar, the murderer of Fatima, 2001. He was indeed an oppressor against the family of Ahlul Bayt. In the same way, he was a person who prohibited narrating stories of the Messenger of God. This means he was against the Sunnah of the Messenger of God. There you can find it, for example, in many of the books, like here in a Sunni source, Shahr ibn Abul Hadid, volume 3, pages 120. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate, often said, do not interpret the Quran and do not narrate or recount the sayings of the Messenger of God, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Blame me. It means I indeed take responsibility. Do not interpret the Holy Quran, do not explain the Holy Quran, and do not speak of the words of the Messenger of God that explain the Holy Quran. I take responsibility. Well, then Abu Huraira says that if he were in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Umar would hit him with his stick. You send Abu Huraira, the Jew who appeared in the battle of Khaybar in Yemen, a Jew from Yemen, says that Umar ibn al-Khattab did not allow narrations to be told. Even I, being Abu Huraira, the mercenary of Lord Muawiyah, the mercenary who works for Muawiyah, says, the book Al-Badaya, volume 8, page 107. Abu Huraira says, we could not say. The Messenger of God said, they could not say until Umar ibn al-Khattab died. Umar ibn al-Khattab had prohibited and punished people who began to speak about the Messenger of God. He was against the area of the Messenger of God, like Paul, who was against Jesus. He was a Pharisee who was against Jesus. Umar ibn al-Khattab was a follower of the Jews of Medina who was against the Messenger of God and prohibited the narrations. There are many other sources that support this. And now, to conclude, Umar ibn al-Khattab was against wisdom and knowledge. During the conquest of Alexandria, Ambrose wrote a letter to Umar ibn al-Khattab and many books in Alexandria. In Egypt, there were many large libraries. What are we going to do with these libraries? Amreos wrote that Umar ibn al-Khattab responds with the most stupid word he could write. What does he say? He says what is in these books, or in the Holy Quran, so we do not need it. Or it is against the Holy Quran, so we do not need it, then we do not need any of these books, so burn it. All these libraries that were from Egypt, by the order of Umar ibn al-Khattab, were eliminated. Amr ibn Ayos says that he was appointed by Umar ibn al-Khattab in Egypt during the conquest of Egypt. They sent all these books. Some were thrown into the Nile, and others were given to public baths to be burned for heating water. The same happened in the conquest of Iran, when they conquered Iran. When the Muslims conquered the cities of Fars, they found many books. Sadeb ibn Abi Bagos sends a letter and wants the sources. I will give it to you. Is this in the book Kashf Dunum, Volume 1, page 446? And does it write a letter asking what we are going to do with so many books? Umar ibn al-Khattab says that if there is indeed something that will truly guide us, we do not need it. God has guided us with the Holy Quran, and we are grateful. It's not that the Messenger of God taught them to seek wisdom even if it is in China. Umar ibn al-Khattab was against the words of the Messenger of God. Then he says that if it is guidance, it is because God has guided us, and we do not need it. If these books are going to mislead us, then we don't need them. In any case, we don't need them. If that is in the Holy Quran, then we already have the Holy Quran. We do not need it. If it is not in the Holy Quran, it is garbage. They throw it away. So all those books we are going to throw in the trash. The Iranian Egyptian civilization had libraries that could greatly assist Muslims in developing against this ignorant man named Umar ibn al-Khattab. When he came to power, he ordered the destruction of those books, those great libraries. Why? Because he was against Islam. They attacked the house of Fatima so much, they attacked and killed Fatima, the daughter of the Messenger of God. They hated the Messenger of God in his lifetime so much that they always positioned themselves as opponents against the Messenger of God. And later they were also against the Muslims. There are many other strange things about Umar ibn al-Khattab that I believe are sufficient on their own. We have other classes as well. We have talked about how wonderful Umar ibn Jata was, how wise and virtuous Umar ibn al-Khattab was. And knowing these details is enough for a person to follow Umar ibn Khattab even to the depths of hell. Blessed are those who indeed know the truth and are brave enough to adapt to it. And the most unfortunate are those who are fanatical and blindly follow the imams of disbelief, who lead them towards hell. That is to say, Paul, Mr. Paul, who misled, contradicted St. Peter, contradicted Jesus, was a Pharisee. That is to say, Mr. Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was against Imam Ali, against the Messenger of God, and against wisdom. For something bad it was the judo. Peace be upon those who follow the right path. Peace be upon you. From Yose Kontos.